we can move on and we'll talk about Manchester City, Pete. Now, it sounds like there's actually been a bit of an update with Pep Guardiola's future at the club.
The only update is that he won't be going back to Bayern Munich this summer. His representatives have come out and denied that Pep could be making the move back to Bayern, as they're seeking a replacement for Thomas Tuchel. Obviously, he had great success during his spell at Bayern Munich before his move to Manchester City, but I don't think there's any possibility that Pep Guardiola will leave Manchester City this summer. He's still planning ahead, and I think probably the question around Pep's long-term future will probably come in the middle of next season when his contract is up in 2025, and whether he wants to continue at Manchester City or whether they look to tie him down to a new contract. So I think we'll probably know more about Pep Guardiola probably come the back end of this year when if there's going to be talks over a new deal. If there's no talks over a new deal, maybe then there's indications that Pep is ready to see out his contract and maybe take a break from football, because you would imagine if all parties are looking to prolong that stay, it's not going to take a long time to sort, because Manchester City will be desperate for him to stay, and agreeing a new deal wouldn't be any issues at all. So Pep Guardiola will decide his future. I don't think it'll be any other way than that. If he wants to stay at Manchester City, he'll get a new contract. If he wants to leave at the end of his contract and have a sabbatical, I don't think Manchester City will stand on his way and they'll say, "Yep, thanks for your service," and they'll move on, and Pep can take a long overdue break.
And Pete, one name to talk about that's potentially been linked with a move away, Rodri to Barcelona. Is there an update on that, please, or actually his move away potentially from the Etihad this summer?
Yeah, I don't see this one either happening. Don't think Barcelona have got the finances to do it, first of all, and I'm not sure Rodri would be too interested in leaving Manchester City right now. He is the key man in that Manchester City team. We've seen that when he's been out of the team, the results have dipped. I think that's what he's on a silly run at the minute when he's played, he's not lost a game for Man City in Spain. So, yeah, I don't see Manchester City entertaining any offers for Rodri. I think probably the most likely outcome is he ends up signing a new contract at Manchester City at some stage this summer, and to continue his stay at the club, because he's such a key man there. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some rumours coming out of Spain, but don't see how Barcelona could afford Rodri, first of all, and I don't see the player himself being that overly keen to leave City right now as well. And as I said, City will probably do everything they can right now to tie him down to a new bumper contract as a reward for what he's done for the club.
There's no way, is there? Absolutely no way that deal just doesn't happen. I mean, wherever that's been dreamt up, can't from either side. I mean, Barca haven't got the money. I mean, Rodri and at Manchester City, we know that Pep does sell some of his better players. Like, look at last season with Mahrez and Gundogan. People went, oh, and then David Silva at the time, people went, oh, how's he going to replace him? How is he going to do it? But I just think Rodri's too key for that side. He's such an influential player. There's no way in the world that Manchester City are going to sell him.
And Paul, on that note as well, then talking about City with their alleged 115 FFP charges, as we've discussed in previous weeks, if they are hit with sanctions, could we expect some stars to leave? Like you've just mentioned last season with Gundogan and Mahrez, could we see the likes of Erling Haaland, Bernardo Silva go potentially in the future if sanctions are to be on the table?
Depends what the sanctions are, doesn't it? I mean, we're at the mercy of the Premier League and the appeal board, or the board of appeal, the independent board of appeal. Sorry, who we don't know who they are and what they're going to dream up and what punishment they're going to dish out. And if you ask for a few points back, you might get them back. We don't know. I mean, we make a joke out of it, but genuinely nobody knows. And until we get guidelines of punishments for certain offences, i.e. 10 points for 10 million, for example, or 5 points for 5 million, whatever it is, however they do, until those kind of guidelines are drawn up. But every case is, what did they say? Every case is dealt on an individual basis, and it's looked at individually. So we'll never be privy to that information. The only way I think you would see Manchester City players leaving is if the sanctions were that harsh that they fell through the leagues. I mean, I can't imagine many of that first team squad wanting to play in the Championship or League One or Two, depending on what the punishment was. If the punishment was that severe and they went down to the Championship, there may be a case where they have a shut door siege mentality, right, us against the world, we'll be back next season, we'll go and romp the Championship, or the squad and the team will fall apart. And I think it just depends on how harsh the actual sanctions are to the future of a lot of the players. If they're in the Premier League, I don't think you see anybody leaving.
And Pete, talking of Forest, Everton. What do the current FFP cases mean for Manchester City? And given sort of the timelines we've already experienced, how long now are we expecting this case to take? Can we see it potentially starting end of this year and ending next year? Where do we see that going?
Yeah, like Paul says, no one knows. There's so much secrecy around this one. Richard Masters, the Premier League chief, said there is a date in mind for when these charges will be heard. We don't know. We're waiting to find out. I think everybody needs to know before we keep speculating about it, because I don't think the speculation's doing any good, because we keep hearing rumours of all these possible expulsions from the Premier League being dropped down and everything else. There's no rhyme and reason to it. We don't know. It's dragged on way too long. That's probably the biggest thing we can take from it. They've obviously had these 115 charges lying over them now for quite a while now, and yeah, the case needs to be heard. Everton and Forest had one charge against them. Those cases were heard, and obviously they dragged on a bit, probably from what they were probably initially hoping for, that it would be resolved quickly. So I don't see it resolving quickly, this Manchester City thing. There's been talk of maybe initial hearings going ahead in sort of October of 2024, but yeah, I think with appeals and everything else, it's going to drag on, because Manchester City, as we know, have kicked the can down the road, and they will fight their case strongly. And any charges that do go against them, you would fully expect them to appeal them as well. So, because they're protesting their innocence against all of these as well. So, yeah, you can't guess. As I said, it's dragged on way too long. We just need the issue resolved, and so we can just talk about football, because it does do a bit of a disservice to Manchester City, because they have been one of the greatest Premier League teams in history with what Pep Guardiola and the players have done there, and obviously they've had these 115 charges, a bit of a cloud above them really, and that's sort of, I think, for everybody's good, it just needs to be resolved. But yeah, I don't expect it to happen quickly either.
It is. It's a cloud, isn't it? I mean, like you say, you look at Liverpool fans, I think there's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of anger towards the potential charges. Liverpool fans refer to them as cheats, and a lot of other Premier League fans do, because of these charges that are hanging over them. They either need to be resolved one way or another, either charged with the offences or the name be cleared. Because, you look at Jurgen Klopp's era at Liverpool, there's an argument to say that he'd have won 3, 4, 5 more Premier League titles if it wasn't for Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. And if they are deemed to have done that illegally, there'll be a lot of bad feeling throughout football. I mean, I'm definitely not one for taking titles off people and going to change history, because you can't do that. I'm not going to stand on my soapbox and say that. But actually, the stigma around Manchester City at the moment, and the bitterness from other teams for the potential of what they could have achieved if Manchester City have, if they're deemed to have done it illegally.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.